How about warmer temperatures? We take it, right? After a cold couple days, we'll be milder this afternoon. Not that we'll be warm, but upper 50s should feel pretty good. And that's honestly where we should be for the middle of November. So upper 50s next couple days and a much quieter pattern. It's still a little breezy out there, 49 degrees at midday and a mix of sun and clouds. You got to do a story, and the big story going forward, will we see the Northern Lights return tonight?
I saw a lot of folks posting about that.
We had so many people posting. Thank you to all our viewers that sent in pictures from last night. The urban heat island, the light pollution kind of did a number if you were inside the Beltway, but outside the Beltway, fabulous pictures out along the bay, southern Maryland, parts of West Virginia, just incredible the intensity of the light that's out there. So the reason I mention all this, guys, is because we got to keep it clear tonight. I think we're going to be in pretty good shape later this afternoon. We have another round of the electromagnetic storm arriving this afternoon, so we're in pretty good shape here for perhaps another round of Northern Lights tonight. We'll have to all wait and see together. But other than that, we look good. Weather-wise, we'll keep it dry this afternoon. Still wintry to the north, and we are transitioning back to fall with temperatures in the 50s around here the next couple afternoons. Near 60 Friday. Hey, weekend forecast, we'll have some clouds Saturday. That's a warm front, maybe a few late showers Saturday night. Sunday's going to be pick of the week, near 70.
Wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. Hey, you know what? I think I might go out on my friend's boat on Sunday. So,
great to have friends with boats, yeah.
Don't you have one? Well, that's for a whole nother day. Tucker Barnes joining us with all things weather right here on the Live Zone. Guys, if you haven't already done so, make sure you download the Fox Local app and take that forecast with you on the go. Well, it's day 43 of the government shutdown, but it could be one of the last. The House of Representatives now in session for the first time in over a month. This is a live look that you're taking a look at right this very minute. They're there to vote on the Senate's plan to reopen the government. More than a dozen businesses and manufacturing associations are urging members of Congress to vote for the funding bill and get the government reopened. Let's go ahead and take a live look in yet again as the House convenes. All right, so apparently we don't have any sound with regard to that. We'll try to get that to you momentarily. The bill would fund the government through January 30th if approved. It also provides full-year funding for food aid programs like SNAP and WIC benefits, veteran services, and the legislative branch, and has some projections for federal workers. This morning, well, people told Fox 5's Melanie Alnick that they are ready for this to be over.
I've seen it impact Northern Virginia pretty bad. Families going without food, pantries running out of food to feed people. So it's been extremely impactful in a bad way.
And then there's this, new revelations in the Jeffrey Epstein case this morning. House Oversight Democrats released a series of emails alleging that President Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes long before the public did, and spent hours with one of Epstein's victims. In a 2011 email from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, he writes, you're looking at it right there, I want you to realize that the dog hasn't barked, and that dog he's making mention of is Trump. The name of the victim is censored, but Epstein says that they spent hours at my house with him, and he has never once been mentioned. Maxwell responded, I have been thinking about that. In another email, this one from 2019, Epstein mentions Mar-a-Lago to author Michael Wolff. Quote, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never remember ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. With the House back in session today, a vote to release the Epstein files will loom large. Joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Miss Corinne Clifford, independent journalist and member of the White House Press Corps, standing outside of the White House. Corinne, good to see you, and thank you so much for joining us on the Live Zone.
Good to see you. I think this is going to be such an interesting day. Let's see how hard the Democrats try to get back at President Trump, because President Trump is winning.
Yeah, I got to tell you, all eyes are on that building standing or sitting right behind you. In this case, it happens to be the White House. We know that at 1 o'clock we are expecting a White House press briefing. I'm really curious as to what will unfold during that time, as we all know now that the emails to longtime Epstein associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who was convicted of sex trafficking after Epstein's death, and the author, well, Mr. Michael Wolff, include conversations in which Epstein asserts Trump spent significant time with a woman whom oversight Democrats describe as a victim of Epstein's sex trafficking. Your response to all of this?
Listen, I have done a lot of research on this. I was in Palm Beach County, Florida last year investigating this. I am actually a victim of sexual abuse, so I would never, ever, ever disqualify anyone from anything. The bottom line is that President Trump is the reason that Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in the first place. And these emails are old emails. So I'm very concerned because Michael Wolff, the alleged author, gets his funding from very liberal media.
Well, I fully understand that, but at the same time, we have to also keep in mind that these emails were, in essence, transmitted back and forth a number of times, and one of which actually stated that an email that Epstein sent to Maxwell. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. For Epstein to say that, yet again, somewhat making reference to the now president, and obviously all of this taking place prior to the first administration, yet again is troubling to especially the Democrats.
Listen, I do not trust any more of these emails. They could be fake. We don't know anymore. It's been so many years, but Jeffrey Epstein got arrested because President Trump asked the Palm Beach County Sheriff to arrest Jeffrey Epstein. Victims of Jeffrey Epstein were going to the sheriff and police in Los Angeles, in New York City since 1998, 1999. No one would arrest Jeffrey Epstein until President Trump put his foot down and said it's time to arrest Jeffrey Epstein. One more fact you need to know is that I confronted many people outside of Congress last month when they had their protest, and they're going to have another protest, I'm hearing, next week in front of Congress, and I will do it again. I went to Congressman Massey and I said, do you have any proof? Do you have any knowledge that anything about President Trump, because if there was any real information, it would have been used against President Trump in the last election cycle. And Congressman Massey said, no, Trump is not involved in this. This has nothing to do with President Trump. And I have it on video.
All right. Well, yet again, Corinne, we are awaiting a 1 p.m. White House presser. However, that was planned before the emails actually announced earlier today. As far as you know, is the presser still on?
Yes, of course, I'm right here going to it. And of course, people will ask these questions. And of course, Carol and Levette will answer them properly, just like I'm answering them with real facts.
Yet again, something we will continue to keep a close eye on. I know you have been quite busy and took some time out to join us. I tell you what, why don't you go ahead and get set for the presser? If you can, following it, we'd love for you to check back in with us right here on the Live Zone.
God bless you. Thank you. Peace.
All right. Corinne Clifford, yet again, joining us right here on the LZ. Well, speaking of reopening the federal government, which a lot of folks are keeping a close eye on, the chamber, well, set the vote later this evening on the Senate-backed bill to reopen the government. House Speaker Mike Johnson has to sell the package to his razor-thin GOP majority, but he told reporters he is still very optimistic about the vote tally later on tonight. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Mr. Adam Weiss, political strategist, back here on the Live Zone. Adam, it's been quite some time. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. So let's jump into the big story of the day before we talk about the potential to reopen the federal government. It surrounds, yet again, the big news out of Capitol Hill, the series of emails alleging that President Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Your response to that?
What I'm reading so far, it says he knew about the girls. So, but what does that mean? Because supposedly Trump got rid of him at Mar-a-Lago, and it was because he kept, going after his girls. He kept hitting on girls. He kept trying to, take them out. So, that could mean a lot of different things that one sentence could mean. We can't jump to full conclusion here, because, as far as I know, like I said before, he did get rid of him out of the club, so, we'd have to wait and see it.
Yeah, actually, a lot of folks are waiting on the edge of their seats to see if we can find out more information and if that will happen sometime in the near future. Yet again, I will make mention that we are expecting a White House press briefing at 1 o'clock. We'll carry that for you live right here on the Live Zone. You know what else we're waiting for, Adam? Well, the potential to reopen the federal government. Today could be the day. However, we know that the line's very thin. The razor-thin GOP majority, in essence, all have to vote in favor of reopening the government. The likelihood of that happening in your mind, Adam?
I think even though, the progressive left is, very livid over Chuck Schumer and a bunch of the senators making a deal. It has to happen. I saw the Apex guy over the weekend, and because I was flying from South Florida back to New York, and it's very difficult. The prices are going up, everything's being canceled, and this is the busiest time of the year to travel coming up, and that really hits everybody in America. So I think that part, plus the air controllers being off, the flights being canceled, that's really pushing, and that doesn't just our travel, that hits the food supply, that hits the cargo, that hits everything. So being responsible, we have to open the government.
Yeah, and then there happens to be the flip side of that coin. In this case, I'm making reference to the Democrats. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats vowed last night to continue fighting rising health care costs and said they would seek to amend the bill reopening the federal government to address expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies. Yet again, it appears there is now bickering amongst the Democrats.
This opening's for 2 months. That's it. They have to come back till January 30th again. So get the thing open. Let's get people paid. Let's get people back to work. Let's let people travel. Democrats, wake up. You have a whole other year to battle this out through through our process of ideas. Let's get people back to work.
Yeah. All right, we'll end with this, and this happens to be, quite honestly, a light note now with all that President Trump is facing, and that surrounds the demolition of the White House East Wing by bashing its previous condition. During a recent interview with our parent company, Fox News, the president described the area of the White House before it was turned down as a poor, sad sight and added that it looked like hell. A lot of folks somewhat chastising the president for making mention of the wing in that manner. What say you, sir?
I saw this clip he was walking around with Laura Ingraham from Fox News, and it seemed he did a great job on the floors and and paneling and the refurbishing. So as long as it's just an uptake and a fixing of the things, I mean, this thing's very, very old. Everything needs uptake. Everything needs to, things need to be fixed up, and as long as it keeps the history of the White House, and he's having private donations pay for it. I mean, I don't know what the uproar is over. As long as he does, it is the White House. It needs to be fixed up occasionally, and he's not using taxpayers' dollars.
Yeah, well, some would say sprucing up the White House any way, form, or fashion is always a good thing. I guess we'll just have to wait and see the final result. Yet again, we have been speaking with Mr. Adam Weiss, political strategist, joining us on the Live Zone. Always good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Guy.
All right, the time now, 12:14. Yet again, we are awaiting a White House press briefing beginning at 1 p.m. It's the top story of the day, the emails that allege President Trump had some sort of relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and knew about his sex crimes. We will get you the latest on that at about 1 p.m. Meanwhile, did you know that women are 50% of the population and they own 43% of businesses in America? And yet, for over 30 years, firms owned by men have received over 95% of all federal contracts in spending. Many would argue that's why men are responsible for over 70% of all political contributions. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Mr. Bruce DeTorres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League in the Don't Cheat Women, a project that supports advocacy work that aims to elevate women-owned small businesses in federal contracting. Bruce, good to see you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Guy. How are you today?
I'm good, and I think we're going to be doing a lot better once we get more information from you with regard to how we can bring about change. You say step one is to get more federal infrastructure spending into the hands of women. Do tell.
Well, not only infrastructure spending, it's a fair share of federal contract dollars. Because, as you just said, women own 43% of all businesses in America. And they sell what the government buys. And yet they're supposed to get only 5% of federal contracts. And most years, they don't even get that. Only twice in the last 30 years has the government said, oh, we came close to that goal or we met that goal. Every year, women-owned small businesses, in reality, probably get around 1% of federal contracts. And if we want to, we're lobbying Congress, and we're teaching candidates for the midterms next year why we want that 5% figure raised to 15%, because that would push from 23% to 33% the federal contracts that are supposed to go to America's small businesses, which would cause the creation of about 3 million new jobs on top of the 2 million jobs that America typically creates. And it sheds light on what we have found for 35 years, our founder has for 20 years as the ASBL, and congressional investigations, Guy, which is small businesses don't get those 23% of contracts. Big businesses get 95, 96, 97% of all federal contracts. And here's the last point before I solicit your thoughts. 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses. 1/10 of 1% are big. And that 1/10 of 1% are getting almost all federal contracts.
Yeah.
Through bad policies and loopholes and really fraud. The SBA every year says, oh, we gave 23, 24, 25% of federal contracts to small businesses. No, it's not happening. And it's a break on the economy. It's a boot on our face. And it needs to be known. And thank you so much for giving me a chance, to talk about these things.
Yeah, but of course, Bruce, it is evident. It is now the year 2025. We are soon embarking on 2026. And I'm having this discussion with you. This is still an issue. And so with that being said, how likely is it that we can really bring about change, we as a society?
Well, isn't that the question? You can't fight City Hall. So the cockeyed optimist or just the determined person has to say, we're going to pursue it anyway. It doesn't matter whether I succeed or fail. I'm going to fight the fight that I want to fight and believe is right to fight. Not to make too many rhymes here. President John F. Kennedy said when he was a senator in his book Profiles in Courage, a man does what he feels he must. That's all there is to morality. But here's the great benefits. Because women own 40% of all businesses and they sell what the government buys, and they're doing well academically. I think they're creating more new businesses than men. They are still not economic equals. Men still earn and save more than women. And here's why women need all the help they can get. Because men earn and save more, they are more politically powerful. Number one, like you said, they're responsible for 70% of donations to politicians, so they have more influence at that level.
Sure.
They also run for and win office more than women. Men hold 75% of all seats in the House, the Senate, every president's cabinet, all state legislatures, almost that many governor chairs, and 90% of committee chair positions and party leadership positions are held by men. Women are half the human race. We need their intelligence. We need their values. And they have a right to have seats of power to vote for and stand for and advocate and bring to pass the policies and priorities that are near and dear to them. And they are different from men. We presume we needed our mothers and our fathers. So once we do everything we can to help women have economic equality, they can pursue political equality based on the merit and the intelligence and the power of their ideas, of course.
Bruce, we're going to have to leave it right there. But yet again, Bruce D. Torres, Director of Communications for the American Small Business League in the Don't Cheat Women. Folks that want to find out more information, Bruce, how would one go about to do so?
Don'tCheatWomen.com.
Absolutely love it, and we absolutely love you for joining us. Thank you so much. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. On the flip side of that break, did you hear about the movie that focuses on the U.S. Military Academy's rugby team? Oh, it's all the rage. You will meet the director next, right here on the Live Zone. All right, folks, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone, scams. They happen to be becoming a thing of the norm. However, the D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro says, well, under her watch, that will no longer be the case. Earlier today, she held a press conference. Here's what she had to say.
Target a growing epidemic, and that is crypto investment fraud scams perpetrated by organized Chinese crime syndicates that successfully target Americans and victimize them. In 2024 alone, Americans were scammed out of more than $9 billion as a result of this cryptocurrency fraud. Experts estimate, because of underreporting, that it is as much as 15 times more than the $9 billion. It starts by weaponizing the very devices that you and I hold and use every day to do our banking, to enrich our lives, to communicate with our friends and our loved ones. And sometimes people communicate with us whom we don't look forward to speaking to. But they meet on social media platforms like Facebook, and they text their victims seemingly by mistake. They prey on older Americans because of their loneliness. They first gain their trust, and then they move the conversation to WhatsApp or other encrypted communications. And they shuttle their victims from legitimate crypto platforms to fake platforms that they themselves create and control. What I have here is a classic example of the kinds of contacts that people can get in a text message. So it would say, for example, "Hi, Patricia, I didn't see you at the gym today." And the person with the phone says, "I'm not Patricia, it's the wrong number." And the scammer says, "So sorry, I hope I didn't disturb you." And Patricia, or the wannabe Patricia, says, "No worries at all." And the scammer says, "You seem like a really nice person. What's your name?" She identifies herself as Sandy, goes back and asks him what his name is. And then it begins. Now, since President Trump has sought to make the U.S. a leading haven for cryptocurrency, it's important for Americans to understand the safe use of the commodity. There are no tricks that can be a part of cryptocurrency. As part of the president's goals, we strive to expose these fraudulent contacts and pitfalls so that Americans end up being secure in their investments. Now, the consequences of these scams are devastating. Older Americans in particular are targets of these scams, many of them lonely, many of them looking to speak to someone who communicates with them. Their entire life savings gone. Their retirement funds gone, left with no opportunity to go back into the workforce and to re-earn money. I want to give you two examples. One is a woman who said she sent...
All right, yet again, D.C. U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro speaking on all things combating scams that we have seen arise as of late, not only here in the nation's capital, but throughout the country. We're going to take you there to now the Make America Healthy Again conference that's taking place. Obviously, you can see Vice President J.D. Vance. He is flanked by the Human Health Secretary, Mr. Kennedy. Let's go ahead and take a live look in.
Now, it would be great if we could get congressional Democrats to actually do something meaningful with us. Because you would think, you think Democrats, they like to say that they're for the working people against the big pharma companies. So you would think that legislatively they would want to work with us, but it's actually been hard to get them to work with us. So we've had to sort of go outside of the system and work with private industry to do some of this stuff. And I think you guys have done an incredible job with that. But if you look at a lot of our most important health initiatives, they have come through partnership with private industry in some form or another. And I also think that there's a mindset shift where you mentioned some of the people like Marty, like Jay, who have been such a critical part of what you've been doing. The thing that I love about the team that Bobby has put together is, yes, a lot of them have a sort of private sector mindset. They just want to get things done. They don't care about the bureaucracy or they don't care about all the people saying no in government, because as Bobby and I have learned, there are a lot of people saying no, you're not allowed to do that, or no, you shouldn't do that. And we just have to punch through that in order to achieve results for the American people. But I also just love that Bobby has put together a team of people who are not terrified to think about things in new and interesting ways. And if you think about what has been so broken about the public health bureaucracy in this country for years, for decades, generations even, it's that people think in incredibly conventional ways. And if you bring them a non-conventional idea, their automatic assumption is, no, we're not allowed to talk about that, much less fund something related to that. And I think it's maybe the most important thing of all the specific initiatives that you guys have worked on effectively. The most important thing is that your team is willing to ask questions that people in government haven't been asking in a long time. And if you think about how unhealthy the American population has gotten over the past 20 or 30 years, you're not going to fix that problem unless you have people at the table who are asking different questions than the ones that were asked 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the... One of the interesting things about working with this president is that, you know, we're coming into these bureaucracies that have constructed these orthodoxies, and it's just a series of very narrow Overton windows.
Absolutely.
You're not allowed to bring the conversation out of that, or you get destroyed.
That's right.
And now we're working for a president who just takes a bulldozer to Overton windows and does... That like shocks us every day, and then we go, okay, well.
That's exactly right. That is a good summary of Donald J. Trump, is that he takes a bulldozer to Overton windows every single day. But it had to happen. It just had to happen. And if you look at so many of the things that are happening on the public health side, I mean, you know, one of the criticisms that Bobby will always get, and I always think it's such bullshit, excuse my language, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that. It's probably covering, you know, I apologize to everybody who's watching live on Fox News. Hopefully they were able to bleep that out. But anyway, is sometimes there's this attack where people say, well, you know, this or that conclusion is not supported by the science, or this or that conclusion is a conspiracy theory. And science, as practiced in its best form, is that if you disagree with it, then you ought to criticize it, and you ought to argue it against it, but you can't shut down the debate. And that really is, if you look at all of the big public health debates that we've had in this country over the last 20 or 30 years, it doesn't bother me that they disagreed with something that I believed or disagreed with something you believed or any of you. It's that they tried to silence the people who were saying things that were outside the Overton window. And as we found out the hard way over the last few years, it was very often the people who were outside the Overton window who were actually right, and all the experts were wrong.
I had a conversation with Marty McCary the other day, and he reminded me that over the Royal Society, the building, the portal for the Royal Society in London, which is the oldest scientific society in the world and the most prestigious.
Of course.
It says question everything.
Yes.
And that is, you know, that's what science is. It's recognizing that convention is often wrong, and that the people who make advances on science almost 100% of the times are people who are willing to challenge orthodoxies and advance heterodoxies and talk about new ways of thinking. And that, you know, these very ossified bureaucracies that now make up the so-called medical establishment are fortified against that kind of change.
That's absolutely right. And I mean, to put a slightly different spin on it, a lot of the times the people who are discovering things interesting and new are a little weird, right? I mean, American society for a very long time had a willingness to accept unconventional, slightly odd people inside some of these industries, inside some of these bureaucracies. I mean, I've been reading a lot in the past couple of weeks about von Neumann, the Hungarian scientist who came to the United States and was very important in the Manhattan Project. And what I keep on finding myself thinking, I mean, this is a brilliant guy. This is, you know, one of the, I think it was Edward Teller or Oppenheimer or another, the Manhattan Institute people said about von Neumann that von Neumann was talking to his 3-year-old, and then he realized that he used the same skill von Neumann did when talking to a 3-year-old as he did with everybody else, because he was so far above everybody else in terms of brilliance. But then you read about this guy, and I think to myself, half of the shit that this guy said would have gotten him canceled, or would have gotten his career ruined, or would have had his life ruined. There is no way that this country is going to advance unless we're comfortable with people who are willing to challenge orthodoxy. And that's what I think got so broken, not just about the scientific bureaucracy, but probably it was worse in the scientific area than in most other places, is we've got to be comfortable challenging some of these old orthodoxies. And part of that is welcoming people who are a little unusual, because unless you do that, like, you're not going to solve America's problems with McKinsey consultants who say everything the right way all the time. No offense for the McKinsey consultants, because but many of whom are very brilliant people, but like you need the consultant mindset. You also need the person who is just thinking about an idea because it's interesting and it's fascinating and it's not being focused on enough in the right way.
You and I have talked a lot about Appalachia, and both of us come from families that are intertwined personally and politically in Appalachia. You're kind of a golden child of Appalachia. You came out, you went to Ohio State, right?
That's right.
Yale Law School, a successful, uber successful business, a best-selling author, U.S. Senator, and now Vice President of the United States. But it's almost a kind of tragic reminder of the lost potential of almost everybody else in Appalachia, not only for poor health, it's got the worst health data of any region in the country, the highest cardiac disease, the highest obesity, the highest diabetes, the highest stroke rates, but also addiction, alcoholism, and suicide. It leads the nation for those things. And so I know it's something that you've spent a lot of time thinking about. How do we, because we can solve problems in Appalachia, we can solve them for the whole country.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the public health stuff in particular is very bad. And if you look at where life expectancy has gotten the worst in the United States, Appalachia is sort of at the top of the list. And the way that I realized this, actually, so my dad died of cancer a few years ago. And it was one of these sort of super aggressive cancers, came on very unexpectedly, and then all of a sudden he was gone a few months later. But I was talking with my wife, with Usha, about this, and Usha, she was like, have you ever had like a really important male figure in your life survive to the age of 70? I'm looking at, and it's like, okay, my grandfather died at 67 from a very preventable illness, but 67 from a very preventable, very treatable illness. I think all of my aunts or all of my uncles, and not a single one of them that I could think of made it to 69. Maybe one of them made it to 70 or 71. And it kind of hit me that if you grow up in Appalachia, you are used to losing the people that you love very, very early on. And you want to talk about like populism, and you want to talk about people being pissed off. Well, yeah, people are pissed off when they don't have good jobs. And people are pissed off when things disappear and move overseas. And people are pissed off when they feel like, other countries are being prioritized over the United States of America. And all of that is part of the populist resentment of the past 20 or 30 years in American politics. You know what really pisses people off? When they realize that their loved ones are dying much sooner than everybody else. And that is a big part of the story of what's going on in Appalachia, and why I think so many people in Appalachia feel left behind. I mean, my story, obviously, it's been, like you said, I'm like the golden boy. Things have just worked out for me in this really incredible way. I feel so lucky and so grateful for it. But I also feel a certain sense of guilt, because there are a lot of people who grew up in families like mine who haven't had an easy life, and who haven't had all this economic opportunity, and who haven't had a person that they've fallen in love with, and they've been able to sort of build a stable, nice family like me and Usha have been able to build. And that gives me a sense of purpose, because I want those people to have the same opportunities that I've had. But it also gives me a great sense of anger, because we never should have gotten to the point that we are today. And the reason that we have is because of failed leadership, and it's failed leadership over generations. And by the way, you talk about Appalachia, you were talking about people who, though they don't have much, would take the shirt off their back and give it to a complete stranger, because that's what you do. If you go back to America's biggest wars, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, which are the counties that filled their draft quotas with volunteers instead of with draftees? It's very often the parts in deep Appalachia where you've got grinding poverty, but you've also got this incredible love of country. So if any place in this country deserves not to be left behind, it's Appalachia. But on the public health stuff in particular, the numbers don't look good. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a big supporter of what you're doing, because these are people who deserve to live better, healthier lives, but they really have been left behind by this country's leadership.
Talk a little bit about how MAHA has affected you personally. My grandchildren go to school with your children. And the MAHA, I think, has gotten a lot of people thinking about how they raise their kids, what they feed them, et cetera, how they go shopping. And then maybe to talk a little bit about the political impacts of MAHA.
Yeah, so there are so many different ways I could talk about this. I mean, one, I just met, Bobby's family backstage, or at least some of them, and I kept on shaking hands with various people, and I'm like, well, you're an Irish Catholic, so it makes sense that you've got, a dozen or so people backstage. But I love that. I love big families. But so one, my wife, she's probably one of the original MAHA people, though I don't think that she would have ever used that phrase. Because I remember, our oldest son is 8 years old, and when babies typically eat solid food around 6 months of age, and I remember when he started eating solid foods, and I'm like, awesome, let's give him some cupcakes and ice cream. And my wife was like, no, let's give him carrots and applesauce here. So she was already thinking about health and nutrition in a way that was frankly kind of foreign to me, and that I think is very common among the MAHA crowd. You guys are asking the right questions. What are we putting into our bodies? Where was it sourced from? If we're eating animal-based protein, is it coming from a place where the animals are treated the right way? If we're putting medications into our body, are we actually confident that they're doing the thing that they're supposed to do, that they're safe and effective? I just think this whole thing is about asking very critical questions about what we're putting into our bodies, into the bodies of our kids. And it's really affected me in a very profound way, and how I think about my own nutrition, about particularly how I think about what my kids are taking. And, I'm like one of these crazy people. The one way in which I'm more instinctively MAHA is that if I have a back sprain, or I slept, weird, and I woke up with back pain, I don't want to take ibuprofen. I don't like taking medications. I don't like taking anything unless I absolutely have to. And I think that's another MAHA style attitude. It's not anti-medication, it's anti-useless medication. We should only be taking stuff, we should only be giving our kids stuff if it's actually necessary, safe, and effective. And I think that's an attitude that's really beneficial to the entire country, because we do have, you've talked about this as eloquently as anybody, we do really have an obesity epidemic in the United States of America. I think a big part of that is not asking where our food comes from. We really do have medications that I don't think, maybe they're not solving the chronic disease epidemic, maybe some of them are even causing the chronic disease epidemic. We've got to be asking more critical questions about what we're putting into the bodies of our kids. And I don't think we were doing that until this movement came along. The job of the vice president has been called the worst job in the country. and I think we're out of time, ladies and gentlemen. I think for some vice presidents that's been true. And I know that President Johnson, during my uncle's tenure, felt that he'd been sidelined, and I think Spiro Agnew and Gerald Ford felt the same way with Nixon. But then you had presidents you had Vice President like Dick Cheney, who seemed to be actually running the country, and then you had these, relationships with... Not very well, it turns out. We agree on that. But Al Gore and Bill Clinton and Mondale and Carter, who had close personal friendships, you have an amazing job because you have a president who clearly puts tremendous faith in you. He relies on you. He's given you an extraordinary retinue of responsibilities. Talk a little bit about how your relationship with the president has evolved. Yeah, that's a great question.
It's clear to all of us in the cabinet how much affection that he has for you and how much he relies on your wisdom.
Well, it's interesting. You're exactly right that the job of vice president is incredibly contingent on the president that you're serving under. And you could have a president who effectively just passes off big swaths of responsibility. You could have a president who delegates. You could have a president who has no trust in their vice president, Kamala Harris, and so it doesn't go very well for that particular vice president. But I think there are two ways that I try to think about my job with the President of the United States. Number one, he requires honest counsel. In other words, if I have an opinion on something, whether I agree or disagree with the administration position, it's really, really important that I talk to the president about it. He doesn't want yes men, and I think it's one of the reasons why you guys have a great relationship, is because you're always thinking about how can I actually give the president the best counsel. But then the second thing is, when the president makes a decision, your job is to execute. It's not to run to the papers and say, well, actually, I disagreed with this decision, or run to the Congress and badmouth the administration. It's to execute. And I think the reason why the president has trust in me is because, yes, I absolutely tell the president what I think about a given issue, but I also recognize I'm the vice president, he's the president, and when the president of the United States makes a decision, it's time to go and get it done. And I think in part because I get things done, right? I mean, sometimes Congress doesn't cooperate. Sometimes the private sector doesn't cooperate. Like, I'm not saying any of us have a batting average of 100, but what I think all of us who have earned the president's trust do is that when the administration makes a decision, when he makes a decision, we actually go out and get it done. And that's why this job has been so empowering for me, is because the president trusts me. He knows I'm going to give him honest counsel. He knows that if he asks me to go get something done, I'm going to try my best to actually go and do it. And that's why we have a good partnership. I think that's why the administration has been so effective this time around, is because there are a lot of people with a very wide diversity of opinions, but we get out there and we try to do the best job for the American people and the President of the United States. And because of that, there's a lot of trust and there's a lot of affection in the cabinet. I mean, you've seen this. I've seen this. But when we're sitting in there and the cameras are off and we're just talking about an issue, there is a deep level of affection and trust between all the senior members of the team. I don't know how it's possible to do this job without it, but I know it's why we've been so successful the past 10 months.
Now we've come to the lightning round.
Great.
Marine Corps workout or Pete and Bobby challenge?
That's tough, man. So it's. I would say Marine Corps workout, especially for me. The one thing, so I can do like 5 dead hang pull-ups. You know, I have longer arms. I'm a little fatter than I should be, and especially like 10 years or so ago, I got a little out of shape, and so it's actually the Marine Corps like physical fitness test has been an incredible guidepost to me getting back in shape. And it's basically you run 3 miles, you do 100 crunches, or now instead of crunches they do it's this weird planking exercise that's a core exercise, and then there's pull-ups. But I felt like that's been a very good focus. The Pete and Bobby challenge is for people who are in as good a shape as Pete and Bobby, which is not yet me, but that's my goal. My goal is to get there.
Who is the funniest guy on the cabinet?
Well, obviously, the President of the United States. So beside him, I mean, look, we all have different views on this. My personal vote for funniest person outside the president is probably Marco. Yeah, Marco. He has an incredible sense of humor. He's got great comedic timing. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, there are a couple others. Look, very good sense of humor on the cabinet. There's a lot of funny people. I think Marco is the funniest outside the president.
He said something that makes everybody laugh at least once during the cabinet meeting.
That's right. Well, I mean, I don't know if you saw this video circulating on social media, but the president met the president of Syria, al-Shara, in the Oval Office a couple of days ago, and he asked him, he's like, "Well, how many wives do you have?" and it's just like, oh, what an amazing question, amazing comedic timing. There are layers to it. There's like a meta humor to it. It's just anyway, But we got a lot of good humor in the cabinet.
One of the funniest moments in any cabinet meeting, President Trump had them bring in a full-size picture of himself with Putin, and when they were in Hawaii, and he's very tall and Putin was very short. Putin came up to about here, and he said, "You know what I said to him?" He said, "I've had it up to here with you." There are 8 presidents from Ohio. How many can you name?
Oh,
This is unfair.
that is a totally unfair question. I regret coming to this event based on that question. Okay.
None of them, well, with one exception. None of
Okay, so obviously U.S. Grant.
Yeah.
I have a particular affinity for him. Both of us have beards. Rutherford B. Hayes.
Good.
Was Cleveland, Ohio, or is it somebody else?
I don't think Cleveland was.
Okay, the problem is a lot of the Ohio ones are frankly the range of presidents where nobody can name them.
Yeah.
So it's
Except
like,
for
like
Grant.
most people can like go up to Jackson, and then they know there's sort of Lincoln and Grant, and then there's like, a black hole of presidents. Those are the Ohio presidents. Please don't judge my home state because it was just it was a different time in the country. So the answer is apparently 2.
Did you read Chernoff's biography of Grant?
I did. Incredible. One of my best friends actually gave it to me 4 or 5 years ago. Incredible book.
It is.
And he was an incredible guy.
Made you fall in love with Grant.
Absolutely. And people, he was attacked after he died by a lot of his political opponents. A lot of what I learned in grade school and high school history about Ulysses S. Grant is actually fake. He was a great general. He was also a great president.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Bobby.
all for being here.
All right, there you have it. Yet again, the Vice President and Human Health Secretary, RFK Jr., of course, Mr. J.D. Vance, speaking at the Make America Healthy Again Summit at the Waldorf Astoria. The two speaking on a number of things. Of course, the summit all surrounds the initiative aiming to end chronic disease epidemic by focusing on prevention, transparency, and eliminating harmful substances from the food supply and environment. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. 5 Live Zone. Time for our Wednesday Talkers. And when it comes to talking, I got to tell you, this guy perhaps does it the best. Dennis T joining us right here on the LZ. What's up, my man?
Man, guys, it's a pleasure to be here. And you know what? You like winners. And I'm standing beside a winner right here, ladies and gentlemen. The one and only Guy Lambert right here.
Oh, man, I appreciate you,
no,
brother.
Seriously, man. I love what you're doing in the community and the show. You're really creating a movement, and you don't even know it.
Wow.
That's the thing about it. Young black men look up to you and aspire to be where you are one day. So thank you for your
man,
leadership
that means a lot.
and commitment to our community, man. You're the guy.
I truly appreciate
He's
that.
the winner.
But wait, there's more. You're doing that just as well because you're giving back, teaming up with Clark Construction.
That's right. Clark Construction, they're actually educating young people that you don't necessarily have to start your life in debt to be successful. You can get a career in skilled trades, being a carpenter, in upholstery, a plumber, all of that in construction. And they have a great apprenticeship program where you can actually just sign up to be with Clark Construction. They would teach you all the skills trades and pay you at least $60,000.
Wow.
After graduating high school. And that right there can help you start your life, start your career debt-free.
Absolutely love that.
I
That's
love
taking
that.
place when?
December the 8th will be at Capital One Arena. And you know what? We're not really supposed to really just broadcast it out right there, but I'm giving everybody right now a sneak preview with the winner, the one and only Guy Lambert.
I truly appreciate that yet again. Let's get into our Wednesday Talkers. In this case, some of the stories folks are discussing at home, and I cannot wait to get your take on this.
Okay.
The 35th anniversary of the Housekeeping Olympics happened Monday. 9 teams of housekeepers from various hotels and casinos compete in multiple events, including a vacuum race, a mop relay, a bed making competition, and tucking sheets relay. So this brings up a couple of questions. What would your gold-winning event be for housekeeping, Dennis T?
Wow. That's a hard one. You know, I have dogs.
Right.
We have a lot of dog care around the house, so I'm going to go with vacuuming.
Okay.
With that one right there, because we want to make sure our house is hair-free, dog-free. So
That's a good one.
My son has bad allergies too.
Yeah.
So he's always sneezing. I'm going to go with vacuuming, guys. What would you go with?
For me, it's probably the dishes. I have been washing the dishes since, I don't know, I was yay-high. As a kid, absolutely hated it. Mom would come home, wake me up. You were supposed to wash the dishes. Now I'm that guy, but I don't have any kids, so I wake myself up. Wash the dishes, guy.
Now, do you use a dishwasher? Or do you
I
actually
do now,
wash them?
yeah.
Okay.
But the pots all, actually wash in the sink, dry them. But yeah, the other dishes, I just throw them in the dishwasher. I'm so lazy, I buy paper plates and plastic forks and knives just so I can throw them away afterwards.
No, that's not lazy. That's smart. That's smart, guy. And guess what? All you have to worry about is yourself. We have a house full of 3 kids and 2 dogs, and we buy plastic, forks and spoons. It's economical. It's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Plus, I hate washing dishes.
Hey, we team up. You do the vacuuming, I'll do the dishes. Let's move on to this one. Actually, producer Joey going to join us with the next story. What you got, Joey?
Hey, I'm joining you guys with the next story. All right, so what we got is I went to Hibachi last night, and I want to show you this trend. You might have seen it on TikTok, etc. And it's the babies reacting to hibachi for the first time. When they stare into the fire, into the onion-flavored inferno right in front of them, they're changed. They're seeing something deeply emotional. I've never seen an expression like a baby staring at hibachi for the first time. Have you guys ever had this, and what have you thought?
First of all, that's the cutest baby I've ever seen. Yeah, but it's something about being at a hibachi restaurant, Dennis T, I would say. It's, it's the whole mystique of, seeing the chef do what he or she does, and it's happening right in front of you. And then it's that flame, that
No, you do it again, guy. Do it again. Yeah. It's the flame that always catches me. And for kids, that's mesmerizing. Being that close to fire when they're taught, stay away from the fire.
Yeah.
Don't play with matches. Get away from the oven. And they're right there in front of it. So that inferno, it is mesmerizing. And like you said, that is the cutest face right there. That's how I would look if I was that close to flames at that age.
Oh gosh, that's too funny. Let's round out with this, because we could watch that all day. A person on Reddit sharing their Starbucks frustration with the world. Now here's the issue. Apparently Starbucks, they're saying it's not the coffee, or it's not running out of those cups. It's the dirty coffee bar. In the post, the Redditor, I guess what you call it, complains about how Starbucks coffee stations are always messy. Thanks to sloppy customers, we leave spilled sugar and milk, empty packets, and coffee stirrers around the bar top. So that leads me to this. Do you think that's really an issue at Starbucks?
I believe believe it is. It sounds like they need to have the cleaning Olympics in every Starbucks store right there, because that's just extremely nasty. Now, I gotta be honest with you guys. I've never had any coffee. I've never had coffee before.
Really? With all your energy?
Never had it before. I drink pre-workout, so that's where it's coming from. But if I were to get some, that right there would make me not want to continue to shop and support Starbucks. What about you?
Yeah, so I'm a coffee guy, and right before I come into the station every morning, I'll stop. I have this, it's not Starbucks, but a coffee shop I'll go into. And yeah, I go to the little coffee bar, but I'm really particular about cleaning up after myself. And so, you know, I'll take the cap off, some of the coffee spills. I always wipe it up because I don't want to come behind somebody that left their coffee there as well. So it's all about cleanliness for me.
I agree. And best thing is you don't have to wash any dishes.
my girlfriend's a barista. I texted her this story and asked for her reaction. She just replied, "Murder." That's how baristas feel.
She should. Hey, folks want to get a chance to check you out, Dennis T. How would they go about to do so?
Yeah, sure. Follow me on social media at It's Dennis T, and also my fitness page at Back That Fit Up, where I'm giving people
I love that.
those fitness tips that will help change your life, and especially since Thanksgiving is coming around, you got to know how to keep that core nice and tight.
Make sure you check them out. Not now, but right now. Dennis T joining us right here on the Live Zone. I truly appreciate you, my man. All right, folks, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, folks, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. It is now 1:02, 2 minutes past the top of the hour. You're taking a live look at the White House, where any minute now we are expecting a White House press briefing. Obviously, all eyes on the White House as we have now embarked on day 43 of the government shutdown, but it could be one of the last. The House of Representatives in session for the first time in over a month to vote on the Senate's plan to reopen the government. That will be discussed during this presser. But wait, there's more. Also, new revelations in the Jeffrey Epstein case. House Oversight Democrats released a series of emails alleging that President Trump knew about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes long before the public did and spent hours with one of Epstein's victims. You're taking a look at one of the emails to which President Trump was allegedly discussed with among Ms. Maxwell and Mr. Epstein, who is now deceased. All of that and more will perhaps be discussed during the White House briefing set to get underway any minute now. And when that happens, we'll take you there live right here on the Live Zone. Meanwhile, the families of multiple campers and 2 counselors at Camp Mystic who died in the devastating flash flood in Texas in July are now suing the camp, alleging gross negligence and reckless disregard for the safety that led to a self-created disaster that claimed the lives of 28 people in total. Joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Mr. Tad Thomas, trial attorney of Thomas Law Offices, PLLC. Mr. Thomas, good to see you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good to be back. Thank you.
All right, sir. So among the actions, the lawsuit cites the recent announcement that Camp Mystic will partially, and I'll repeat, partially reopen one of its sister sites next summer and continues to evaluate plans to rebuild the current location that we all discussed earlier today. I'm curious, your thoughts on all of this?
You know, if the facts that are laid out in the complaints are true, it's really devastating. It's a tragedy that these children lost their lives anyway. But the knowledge that the camp had that these buildings were in a flood zone, the way that they went about trying to get them removed from the flood maps, their refusal to evacuate when the evidence was clear, the camp was going to be inundated from flooding. It really is a sad, sad story, and the complaints lay out a lot of evidence of gross negligence and wanton conduct.
Yeah, there are several lawsuits that have been filed, and I want to go through the 3 in total, to my knowledge, and I want you to walk us through all 3 of them. The first one claims that, in essence, camp officials focused on profits over safety and made catastrophic decisions concerning the cabin locations. I believe you just touched on that, but yet again, this is top of mind for so many that have now filed a lawsuit.
Yeah, the complaints talk about generations, decades of knowledge that these buildings were in a flood zone and that the camp repeatedly had flash floods over the years and that these buildings needed to be relocated. And the camp owners, according to the complaints, intentionally fought back to prevent these buildings from needing to be rebuilt. They did everything they could to save money. One of the also disturbing facts, if proven not true in the complaint, is that the camp owners instructed staff members to save camp equipment for an hour prior to ordering any evacuation of the children. And really, what the complaints lay out is that the children that survived were the children that ignored that had counselors that ignored the orders from camp ownership and fled to higher ground.
Wow. Just to think that, you know, a child and/or the counselor saying, you know what, we're going to do our own thing, not listen to what someone in a position of authority is stating, and to that they still have their lives. It's just truly troubling. The second lawsuit against Camp Mystic was filed by the parents of an 8-year-old camper. Yet again, just pulls at the heartstring. The lawsuit alleges that the campers and counselors were killed after the river rapidly rose and floodwaters swept through what Camp Mystic officials knew was a low-lying area. How does this lawsuit differ from the first one, if at all?
Yeah, they're very similar. Each one of the 3 lawsuits have some different facts laid out, but essentially they're all claiming the same things. The wrongful deaths of these children, some of the camp counselors as well. But the facts in all of them are really devastating if proven true for this camp. The camp has been owned by the same family going back to, I believe, the 1970s. That property has been owned by this family. So they're well aware that it had a tendency to flood. They were well aware that these particular buildings, where the most of the children lost their lives from 2 different buildings, that these were in a floodplain and had been for decades.
Mr. Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, but each lawsuit, it stems from obviously the argument that they have put forth in the loss of life. But at the same time, we also know that they're seeking, let's see, monetary funds to the tune of $1 million. Is that something that's normal? I would think that if my daughter or son died, their life is worth a lot more than $1 million.
Certainly, and by the time the case gets to trial, that number will be revised. Typically, numbers are put into complaints as a procedural matter initially. In a lot of states, you either don't put in a number or you're not even allowed to put in a number. But what we expect is that these will be revised to be substantially larger when the time comes.
All right, we'll end with this, and that is, I know you don't have the crystal ball sitting in front of you, sir, but what will likely happen as a result of these 3 lawsuits that have now been filed against Camp Mystic?
I expect that they'll be consolidated. Typically, when you have multiple lawsuits involving the same topic, they'll get joined together in front of one particular judge who will usher them all through the system. I would expect that, number one. Number two, typically these claims are resolved prior to a trial. It's, in this case, who knows? It's a question of how much insurance there is, what the availability of assets there are. And frankly, it becomes up to the parents. Sometimes the parents want to get this behind them, are willing to resolve the case for some payment and maybe changes to the particular camp. Others, they just want justice, and they're going to proceed straight to trial and have a jury trial on it.
Yet again, our hearts go out to all of those who lost their lives at Camp Mystic. Truly pulls at the heartstrings. We've been speaking with attorney Tad Thomas, kind enough to join us right here on the Live Zone. Sir, we truly appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right, folks, if it's live and it's happening, we're taking you there now. In this case, Capitol Hill. Let's go ahead and pull that up, Joey. We're taking a live look at a stakeout, if you will. Several lawmakers, while we were just holding that last conversation, actually walked by these reporters and made statements. It all surrounds the potential, and I will say that again, the potential of reopening the federal government. It is now day 43, and, well, hopefully for some, and perhaps not hopefully for others, it could be one of the last days. The House of Representatives currently in session for the first time in over a month to vote on the Senate's plan to reopen the government. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Saida Abbas. She will have the latest surrounding that, and yet again, should another lawmaker make his or her way to that area, we'll take you there as well. Oh, by the way, still waiting on that White House press briefer, set to get underway any minute now. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. The countdown is on. In just a matter of hours, lawmakers will gather to vote yay or nay as to whether or not to reopen the federal government. Saida Abbas joining us now with the latest.
Yeah, Guy, like you mentioned, if they start talking about this, we're going to take you there immediately. But again, like you said, it is day 43 of the government shutdown, and the pressure and the motives to reopen the government heating up as folks are trying. The House is expected to vote on a funding package, like Guy mentioned, this afternoon, but the proposal does face major backlash from some lawmakers, and this as the shutdown places food assistance in limbo for millions and millions of Americans. More than a dozen business and manufacturing associations are urging members of Congress to vote for the latest funding bill and get the government reopened. Members of the House of Representatives are posting their travels back to Washington, some by road trips, some by train, and even on motorcycle for the vote. The bill would fund the government through January 30th. It also provides full year funding for food aid programs like SNAP and WIC benefits, veteran services, and the legislative branch, and has some protections for federal workers. Now, getting SNAP benefits restarted would be a relief to some 42 million people who do depend on them. The Trump administration has been arguing that it does not have to dip, and we're going to take you right to that meeting right now.
I think we're in an unprecedented moment that demands that we consider whether or not it's the time for new leadership.
How many Democrats do you think are going to break ranks today and vote for the CR?
Let me just say, I think that it's really important that we not lose the plot here. I understand why you're asking that question, but I want people to remember why we're in this situation in the first place. It's because the Republicans are architects of chaos and harm. They are incompetent and they are indifferent to the suffering of the American people. I have people who live in Republican districts calling me, writing me, emailing me, asking me to meet with them because their own members won't meet with them. This is the occupant of the Oval Office and went as far as the Supreme Court to deny hungry children food, and now he's going to deny those children, their parents, health care. So we just need to keep the focus, not lose the plot. The plot is the people, and remember who is to blame for the moment we find ourselves in. Democrats are the one defending health care. Democrats are the one fighting to keep American families whole and fighting for progress. And the polling shows that the American people understand that as well. Who are orchestrated this shutdown, and who is to blame for the fact that the cost of their lives has still not been lowered.
And then the plot question, what do you do between now and January 30th to try to make sure the next bill does have what you want?
Yeah, I think the point is we stayed working. I mean, imagine this. The other side created cruel work requirements for hungry people to get SNAP, but then they have not shown up for work for the last, 43 days or whatever it is. So we're always ready to work, and we're ready to negotiate, but you need two people to negotiate. So I'm willing to sit at the table and work with anyone in the name of progress, and that's what we're going to do.
Congressman, are you thinking about running in the Senate in Massachusetts at all?
Right now, I'm just squarely focused on reopening the government and mitigating the harm that my district's feeling, because my district was one of the districts hardest hit by the first Trump presidency, and that's bearing out in this moment, now as well. So that's really what I'm focused on. But it's no secret that I've been managing a fair amount of positive incoming, asking me to consider it. But I'm shoulder to shoulder with my delegation, squarely focused on defending our shared constituents.
And there's a progressive New York council member who is considering a bid against Leader Jeffries. Do you think that's counterproductive?
Look, this is a democracy. I was elected to Congress in a primary, and so, can certainly, I'll just leave that there. But I'm very proud of our Democratic leadership, which is And so I'm very proud that my caucus has remained united and continued to focus on the most important thing, which is the people, and that's a testament to our leadership.
Let me ask you, this discharge...
And that includes Hakeem Jeffries, obviously.
This discharge petition to try to get the ACA extension for 3 years. There's some Republicans on the other side of the aisle who think that he should be extended, but maybe not for 3 years, or maybe make an adjustment to exactly the way it was done. Do you think maybe that's negotiable? What goes into that discharge petition would be negotiable?
Well, I don't have the text of anything in front of me. Now, I consider, every bill when I have text immediately in front of me. What I would say is that Republican tax breaks, those are permanent. So we should be considering, how best to support the American people, and that's to ensure that health care is within their reach. Given the impacts of the big betrayal bill and the cuts to Medicaid, when you compound that with not extending the ACA subsidies, again, the greatest wealth for our country is the health of our people. It is not a nice have, it is a must have. So, I'll be fighting for that to be, in my opinion, it should be permanent. But we'll see what happens in these negotiations. Again, permanent tax cuts, for Donald Trump and his billionaire friends, which is really what all this is about. But we can't find a way to make permanent those tax subsidies to ensure that health care remains in reach for people. Let me just tell you one story. I have a constituent who is a social worker who received a letter that his health care was going to go from a little over $200 to now almost $1,000. He runs a men's homeless shelter. He's someone who was unhoused himself, who has changed his life and now does the transformative work of helping others to get on the best path. And his health care will not be inhibited. So we're going to have people that are going to get hungrier, sicker, poorer, less safe. I mean, under Republican majority, they continue to make history for all the wrong reasons. Imagine having the House, the Senate, and the White House, and you choose to use that majority to exact and enact harm. It's unconscionable and 100% preventable.
You mentioned you are getting encouraged to run for the Senate. Is that from people who think that Senator Markey is not doing a good job, or is it more about a generational thing? What's the sentiment you're getting from these people?
Again, right now what I'm focused on is reopening the government and mitigating the harm that my constituents are experiencing. And I am shoulder to shoulder with every single member of this Massachusetts delegation in this moment, focused on that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time, Congresswoman.
Thank you.
All right, yet again, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley out of Massachusetts discussing all things surrounding the government shutdown. We're also joined by Saida Abbas with the latest as well. It's really interesting to hear what she had to say, focusing on the SNAP benefits and or the lack thereof. And as far as she put it, she will vote no, cast a nay vote when they actually vote on this measure later this afternoon.
Yeah, and they're going to vote on this 4 o'clock today. And I want to mention, she's talked about several different things. So she spoke about the shutdown. Again, the blame game is continuing, where she's pointing fingers at Republicans and she's saying this is not the Democrats' fault. Now, we've been seeing that theme throughout the shutdown, and now it's 40 plus days. But at the end of the day, she also spoke about healthcare and how affordable healthcare is needed as well, and really criticized the Trump administration and pointing fingers at them, what they're putting folks through. But again, everything that we have to see, we're going to see at 4 o'clock tonight for those votes. And if that government shutdown is going to reopen, I mean, who knows? But hoping that these talks can bring both sides together in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting yet again as we wait for a White House press briefing. That should get underway any minute now. That, too, will be the topic of discussion when Caroline Leavitt makes her way to that podium right there. Oh, by the way, can't forget about the Epstein emails that happened to be released earlier today. That allege President Trump knew about Epstein's victims. So a lot to discuss, and we will do just that as we follow it for you step by step right here on the Live Zone. Saida Abbas joining us with the latest. Obviously, we want to make sure we check out your show this upcoming weekend as well, where you will have continuous coverage on whether or not the government has reopened and or stays shut.
Absolutely. If it stays shut, we have somebody coming in to speak about that as well. But either way, you can watch us on Fox Local, Fox 5 Weekend Live. Thank you so much.
Good stuff. All right, folks, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, folks, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone, taking you right now to Capitol Hill, where Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries now speaking on all things surrounding the government shutdown. Let's take a live look in.
For 3 years to provide working class Americans with the certainty that they deserve, Republicans rejected it because they have zero interest in lowering the high cost of living for the American people, and Republicans have zero interest in addressing the health care crisis that they've created. Democrats will strongly oppose this legislation on the House floor.
Leader Jeffries, will you put a discharge petition on the floor for those ACA extension?
Yes.
Why 3 years? Why not one or something?
Affordable Care Act tax credits were extended by 3 years in the Inflation Reduction Act. The legislation that we will introduce in the context of a discharge petition will provide that level of certainty to working class Americans who are on the verge of seeing their premiums, copays, and deductibles skyrocket, in some cases experiencing increases of $1,000 or $2,000 per year. This is unsustainable, unacceptable, and it's un-American.
Is the discharge petition negotiable, given that some Republicans would be willing to vote for ACA extension, just maybe not in the exact way that it's being proposed now?
The Republicans have zero credibility on this issue. These are folks, these Republicans, who have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 70 different times in the last 15 years. There's no evidence that they're serious about extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. As a matter of fact, they were given a very reasonable proposal by Leader Schumer, a 1-year extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits and a bipartisan commission to address.
All right, yet again, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries discussing all things surrounding the government shutdown. We'll take you from Capitol Hill to the White House, where White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt now addressing the media. Let's take a look in.
Had a very successful meeting on his trip to Asia with President Xi, where they discussed the need for China to crack down on fentanyl production and distribution, which ultimately makes its way here to the United States of America. And the FBI director recently traveled to China following President Trump's meeting to meet with his counterpart in Beijing. And he has a really positive announcement for the American people to share. So the president wanted me to bring the FBI director out to share that with all of you today. So Cash, please, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Caroline. As Caroline mentioned, we have some tremendous news thanks to President Donald J. Trump once again for the American people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China, we set up a framework to execute that mission 8 months ago. Attorney General Bondi immediately thereafter took steps to engage her counterpart in China at the Ministry of Public Security. Pursuant to their direct discussions, as the FBI director designated to run counterpoint on this, along with the Secretary of State Rubio and Ambassador Perdue and the team here at the White House, we set forward a path to implement the policy needed to crush the plague of fentanyl. Deputy Attorney General Blanche and our teams have been hard at work ever since, ultimately culminating in my trip to Beijing last week. This was only possible due to President Trump's historic engagement with President Xi just a few short weeks ago that set the stage for today's announcement. At that meeting, the leaders reached an agreement. But just to put this in frame for the American people, a reminder here that nearly 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses just last year alone. Here, this year, under this president, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl so far. That is a 31% increase from the same time period last year. To put it in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill 127 million Americans. Fentanyl precursors are what makes up fentanyl. While we, the interagency, the Department of Justice, have been fighting hard to seize and stop drug traffickers, we must attack fentanyl precursors, the ingredients necessary to make this lethal drug. That was the sole purpose of my trip to China, to eliminate these precursors. And if successful, we would suffocate the drug trafficking organization's ability to manufacture fentanyl in places like Mexico. This was the first time an FBI director has been to China in over a decade and received the audience with his counterpart to address this matter directly. And again, thanks to President Trump's direct engagement with President Xi, the government of China committed fully to my engagement there on the ground in Beijing at a level never seen before. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug. Effective immediately, essentially, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug. This historic achievement has saved tens of thousands of lives. This historic achievement would not have been possible without the tremendous team of President Trump, the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Ambassador Perdue in China, whose ground-level engagements were imperative to achieving this result. This is yet another example of how President Trump defends the American people, provides security for the American people, and puts the American people first. This is a historic first-in-its-kind achievement by any president to stop the scourge of fentanyl, and it should be championed by every single American. This achievement will save lives. We are thankful for President Trump's steadfast leadership, and this FBI will fearlessly follow in his footsteps to ensure that this mission of safeguarding the American public is achieved every single day. Thank you. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you again, Director Patel. Before we get going, I do have one quick scheduling announcement. Tomorrow, President Trump will be joined by the First Lady in the East Room for an executive order signing aimed at expanding opportunities for education, career development, housing, and other resources for young people transitioning from foster care to adulthood. This is part of the First Lady's Fostering the Future efforts, which are a Be Best initiative. In other news, the Democrats dragged on the government shutdown for 43 days, the longest shutdown in U.S. history. But tonight, thanks to Republicans, the White House is very hopeful that this shutdown is going to come to an end. The damage caused by the Democrats with this reckless government shutdown cannot be forgotten. It is entirely the fault of the Democrat Party. Just look at the vote count. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have missed their paychecks. Tens of billions in wages and benefits were withheld, impacting vulnerable families. Millions of low-income Americans missed their SNAP benefits. Nearly 20,000 flights at airports across the country were delayed due to staffing shortages, causing Americans to miss family events, vacations, and work obligations. According to Airlines for America, an estimated 5.2 million travelers have had their flights disrupted over the course of the Democrat shutdown. And our economy has lost billions and billions of dollars in economic activity over the course of this shutdown, hurting consumer sentiment and crushing the travel and hospitality industries. According to a CBO estimate, the Democrat shutdown could end up decreasing fourth quarter economic growth by 2 whole percentage points. The Democrat shutdown made it extraordinarily difficult for economists, investors, and policymakers at the Federal Reserve to receive critical government data. The Democrats may have permanently damaged the federal statistical system, with October CPI and jobs reports likely never being released. And all of that economic data released will be permanently impaired, leaving our policymakers at the Fed flying blind at a critical period. It's hard to recap all of this without asking a simple question: why? Why have the Democrats put the American people through this pain for 43 days in a row? And it feels like Groundhog Day being up here again talking about this Democrat shutdown. And the answer to that question is pure partisan politics. They started this shutdown with a ridiculous demand to force taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits to illegal aliens who broke into our country. Even after it was clear President Trump and Republicans would never force American taxpayers to pay for free health care for illegals. In fact, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill fixed that problem. The Democrats kept dragging this reckless government shutdown on for weeks longer to boost their turnout in an election, perhaps one may guess. That's because the Democrats are totally captured by their far left-wing base, who only care about attacking President Trump, even if it means hurting innocent Americans in our country. The Democrats' weakness and their unwillingness to buck the fringe members of their party dragged this harmful shutdown on for 7 weeks and inflicted massive pain onto the American public. But let's be clear, the clean CR being voted on today in the House of Representatives that will lead to the reopening of the federal government is what President Trump and Republicans have supported from day one. Our troops, air traffic controllers, and federal employees will be back to receiving their regular paychecks. Families in need will get back to receiving their food purchasing assistance, and the people's government will soon be back open for business. President Trump looks forward to finally ending this devastating Democrat shutdown with his signature, and we hope that signing will take place later tonight. On another matter, I want to address the affordability issue that's received a great deal of media attention this past week, which is ironic because it didn't receive that much attention when Joe Biden was here and inflation was at a record high 9%, the worst inflation crisis in modern American history. And President Trump won a landslide election in part to address the affordability issues created by Joe Biden and the Democrats. And that's exactly what President Trump has done since day one of his administration. Since the first day in office and every day since, the Trump administration has taken aggressive action to fix the Biden-created cost of living issues. The notion that the same Democrats who just shut down the federal government to sabotage our economy, rob people of their paychecks, and also helped Joe Biden ratchet up inflation to 9% are now suddenly affordability champions, that notion is completely absurd. And it's something only the liberal media would have the gall to push. But the reality is that President Trump and his administration have done so much to lower prices and increase the economic prosperity of the American people. And this president and his team of amazing economic advisors are going to keep working on this issue every single day. In less than 10 short months, President Trump signed the largest middle-class tax cuts in American history, including no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, which will guarantee that next year Americans are going to put more money back into their pockets. The president has completely unleashed American energy dominance to help bring gasoline prices to the lowest in 5 years, and we expect them to continue to decrease. And it has also lowered energy costs overall. There is more work to do, but again, the president's deregulatory and pro-American energy agenda is absolutely going to continue to drive down prices. This formula worked in the president's first term, and we expect that it's going to work again. And this is key because we know energy costs are the #1 driver of inflation. Again, just look at what Joe Biden did to our energy industry over the past 4 years of his administration, and look at what happened to inflation as a result. Everything became more expensive. To lower prescription drug prices and healthcare costs, the president has been working around the clock on this issue. He is obsessed with negotiating these good deals on behalf of the American people to bring down pharmaceutical costs and drug costs for Americans, and he has done so on a number of fronts. You have seen him discuss that in the Oval Office several times. To fuel small businesses, lower their costs, and incentivize hiring, the Trump administration has already cut 30 unnecessary regulations for every new one on the books, which we know will save employers and small businesses across the country thousands of dollars in regulatory burdens. All of these pro-Trump policies are working, and they will continue to work. Wages are rising at the fastest pace of the start of a presidential administration in 60 years. The cost of the typical new mortgage is down by nearly $3,000 per year. There's much work to do, and this administration will continue to do it. But President Trump has already made great progress in cleaning up the economic disaster that was created by Joe Biden. With that, I will take your questions today, and in our new media seat, we have Bev Turner, who works for a new outlet, a UK outlet, but based here in Washington, D.C., GB News. Bev, thank you for being here today. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. So the clock is ticking on the Friday deadline by which the BBC must retract and apologise for their malicious edit of the President in the documentary shown last year. The recently resigned Director General of the BBC yesterday described the organisation as the very best of society and blamed the enemies of the BBC for this outcome. Also yesterday, a senior government minister launched a fierce defence of the channel in the House of Commons, saying that the broadcaster remains a light on the hill for people all over the world. So, Does the president feel that the network is taking the situation seriously? Does he believe that they've shown sufficient regret? Does this strain the relationship between the president and the prime minister? And given that the organisation is publicly funded, is the president prepared to bankrupt the BBC in his pursuit of truth and justice?
Well, thank you, Bev. There's a lot of questions in one there. I will say I know the president has a very good relationship with Prime Minister Starmer. You have been there, you've seen them in their interactions, you've questioned both leaders in your time joining us when we've gone to the United Kingdom a few different times now. However, he has always been very frank when he disagrees with leaders even whom he has a good relationship with. And the BBC, being a fair news organization, is definitely an outlet. I think these two leaders would disagree. The president has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain. And I think that the president was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news, and he rightfully dubbed that term many years ago, and this is a classic example of that. We see it in the United States all the time. We see it now in the United Kingdom. As you know, the president's external legal counsel has filed a lawsuit against the BBC. We expect that to continue, and whether they apologize or not is up to them. Thanks for being here, Bev. Ouija.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
I have your statement about the new Epstein emails that have been released by House Democrats. Separate from why you believe the emails were made public, can you address their substance? Did the president ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and is unfortunately no longer with us. Mary.
Thank you, Caroline. Two questions on this. In the interest of transparency, why not just go ahead, release the full files on Epstein, get this all over with?
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people. We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee. That's part of the reason you are seeing these documents that were released today, because of the House Oversight Committee's and Republicans' efforts to get these out to the public. This administration also moved, the Department of Justice also moved to unseal grand jury testimony, which we know, unfortunately, a judge declined those requests. So this administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump, as we have, of course, seen with this government shutdown. And this entire thing, again, it's not a coincidence to the American people at home. There are no coincidences in Washington, D.C. And it is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government. This is another distraction campaign by the Democrat and the liberal media, and it's why I'm being asked questions about Epstein instead of the government reopening because of Republicans and President Trump.
But given your interest in transparency, Caroline, why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns? That is that's a defining factor of transparency. Having discussions with members of Congress about various issues, and I'm not going to detail conversations that took place in the Situation Room in the press briefing room. Reagan.
I have a question about the government shutdown.
Thank you.
The Middle East.
I'm glad someone does.
First, on the government shutdown, the shutdown deal reverses the administration's reps, and it also prohibits more from happening until the end of January. I'm wondering if the president had input on this element of the deal, and if he's at all disappointed that's going to reverse the downsizing of federal government like it did during the shutdown.
I mean, look, I think it's about 6,000 workers total. When you look at that in comparison to the reduction in the federal workforce that this administration has done since January to get rid of the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and to reduce the size of our federal bureaucracy, we've done a lot of great work on that front, and we will continue to. But obviously, the president's main priority was to reopen the federal government and get people back to work, and that's what this deal accomplishes.
There's been reports in Israeli media that the U.S. is considering building a temporary military base on the Gaza border. Can you confirm these reports?
So I had a conversation directly with the reporter who wrote this article, and this article was based on a single piece of paper, an inquiry that somebody in the Department of Navy made about an idea that may happen in the future. And this reporter deemed that as an official plan and ran with a story that the United States is looking into it. I checked with the highest levels of the United States federal government. This is not something the United States is interested in being engaged in. It's not something we are currently involved in right now that we will be funding. And the president has been very clear he doesn't want to see boots on the ground with respect to what's happening in the Middle East. We've made great peace. We've made great progress with the peace plan in Gaza, and we want to continue to see that move forward. But I put a comment in that story for a reason. And sometimes we see reporters take a piece of paper like this and just deem it as official policy, and sometimes that misleads people a little bit. Sure.
There's been a question about UK intelligence sharing regarding the drunk interdictions involving Venezuelan boats. How will that affect the U.S. military operation? There's been a lot of discussion about the high caliber of the intelligence that has been provided before any of these military actions have taken place.
I've seen that report. Oh, hello. I've seen that report. I'm familiar with the reporting, but we don't comment on intelligence matters, classified intelligence matters, as you know. As for the Trump administration's position on our narco-terrorist campaign in the Caribbean, it is going to continue, and the president has made it very clear he's not going to allow terrorists to bring illegal drugs that kill American citizens into our great country. Sure, John. I'll go to John and then Zolan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Trump has talked about sending out $2,000 checks to U.S. citizens. Earlier this year, he also talked about sending a Doge dividend. That didn't materialize. Should U.S. Citizens expect the $2,000 proposal? Is the White House committed to making that happen?
The White House is committed to making that happen, yes. And we are currently exploring all legal options to get that done. I don't have a timeline for you or any further details, but I can confirm for you that the president made it clear he wants to make it happen. And so his team of economic advisors are looking into it. And when we have an update, we'll provide one. Solon.
You said at the top that one of the costs of the government shutdown was that people missed their SNAP benefits. Can you explain then why the administration went to court to fight the funding of food stamps and SNAP benefits?
So recipients missed their SNAP benefits because the Democrats shut the government down, and they forced the administration to tap into a contingency fund that did not even fund the full entirety of this program. And so then you had an unhinged judge who was trying to dictate from the bench what the executive branch has to pay for and where that money has to come from. That is judicial overreach at its finest, and so that's why the administration pushed back on that. We can't have the judicial branch telling the executive branch that we need to rob the Children Nutrition Fund, which is what this judge was trying to do, to pay for SNAP benefits. That's completely inappropriate and it's unconstitutional, and we've been proven right with that legal argument. But now the good news is, again, thanks to Republicans and in several hours, President Trump, the government is going to be reopened, and SNAP recipients are going to receive their full benefits, which is what President Trump has always wanted to do. Stephen.
Why also did you need the judicial process for that? I mean, during this shutdown, didn't the administration have a responsibility to tap into any of those reserves to ensure that essentially
we did. We did tap into it. we did tap into the contingency fund. And then the judge told us, no, you have to get more money from a children's nutrition fund. And we felt that was judicial overreach. He shouldn't tell the president which fund he has to rob because the Democrats are holding the country hostage by shutting down the federal government. Stephen, go
as
ahead.
well, if the president is considering a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
Again, he's answered this repeatedly. It's not something he's talking about or even thinking about at this moment in time. I can assure you of that. Stephen.
Caroline, I've got two questions about New York for you.
Sure.
First,
You always do.
Mayor-elect.
On brand for the New York Post.
Mayor-elect Mamdani, he said that he plans to reach out to President Trump and that, quote, this is a relationship that would be critical. Does the White House have a response to this planned outreach?
It's the first time I'm hearing of it. I'll let the president respond himself to that comment by Mr. Mamdani.
My second question, Jack Schlossberg, the grandson of President Kennedy, announced today that he's running for Congress. He, in the recent past, has referred to his uncle, the HHS secretary, as, quote, a rabid dog, and he has said that the Trump administration is, quote, the most corrupt in American history. Does the White House have a comment on this sort of comment from a rising star in the Democratic Party?
I don't even think such ridiculous comments are worth responding to. Obviously, those things are not true. And Secretary Kennedy is doing a phenomenal job bringing transparency and the gold standard of science back to our healthcare system. Eamon.
Thank you, Caroline. The president's hosting a number of Wall Street CEOs for dinner tonight here at the White House. Can you give us the names of the CEOs who are going to be here and give us a sense of what the president's message to Wall Street is going to be tonight?
I don't have a full list for you in front of me, Eamon. I know you've reported on some names and we've helped you navigate whether those names were truthful or false. But I know the president actually plans to bring some of you into the dinner tonight. So you'll see for yourself in several hours if that's okay with you.
And there's been some reporting that the White House is frustrated with Bill Pulte and the rollout of this proposal for a 50-year mortgage. Can you tell us if the White House is frustrated with that rollout and if the White House still supports the idea of a 50-year mortgage for Americans?
This is a proposal that the president himself has commented on. I would defer you to the president's statements, and it's something that the administration is discussing and seriously looking into. Sure. Danny, and then go ahead.
Thank you. Some Democratic members of Congress have invited Britain's former Prince Andrew to testify on the Epstein scandal. I was just wondering if President Trump thinks that former Prince Andrew should indeed come and testify to Congress on that.
I haven't spoken to him about that specific matter, but I can ask him and get back to you. Mm-hmm.
On the government shutdown, the president and House Republicans have made clear they were not going to negotiate health care strategy or policy while the government was shut down. Now, assuming that it reopens tonight, is the president intending to invite any Democrats over to have negotiations over these subsidies or any other plan to bring down the cost of health insurance?
I will just add that, as you pointed out, the Democrats were holding our country hostage to try to negotiate on a healthcare system that they created. Obamacare, as it's famously called, is a system the Democrats created. It is a broken system. It has driven up healthcare costs dramatically in this country. And now they shut the government down to try to fix that system they broke. It doesn't make any sense to us, which is why the president said that's a completely untenable position. However, once the government reopens, the president, as he's always maintained, is absolutely open to having conversations about healthcare. And I think you'll see the president putting forth some really good policy proposals the Democrats should take very seriously to fix, again, the system that they broke. You can't trust the same people who broke the system to fix it, and so the American people will continue to hear from the president on this issue.
Follow up on the question about the $2,000 payments of tariff revenue. The president had also talked about using tariffs to bring down the national debt. Would this be in lieu of that? Like this is now the new way to maybe to use that tariff revenue?
No, the president put out a statement on this clarifying he wants to do both things with the tariff revenue that he's bringing into this country. Trillions of dollars are expected to continue to pour in, and it's part of the reason that the Supreme Court case is so vital for our country's future, to restore our manufacturing industry in this country, to protect our national security, to continue to allow the president to use tariffs as leverage to negotiate economic deals that, again, are good for our national security. And that revenue can then be used for various reasons, to pay down our debt and also perhaps to give these rebate checks back to Americans, which, again, the White House is exploring the legal options of how we can get that done. Catherine, go ahead.
Caroline, Viktor Orban said this week that President Trump has promised Hungary some kind of financial shield. Do you have any details on how that will be structured or what that would look like?
I don't, but I'm happy to check with the National Security Council and get back to you.
One more. You recently said you'd check with President Trump about why he needed to get an MRI on his recent trip to Walter Reed. Do you have any more detail on that?
I do, and I'm glad you asked. As stated in the memo provided on October 10th, President Trump received advanced imaging at Walter Reed Medical Center as part of his routine physical examination. The full results were reviewed by attending radiologists and consultants, and all agreed that President Trump remains in exceptional physical health, which I know all of you will see with your own eyes later this evening when he opens up his dinner to the press, and perhaps you will see him when he signs the bill to reopen the federal government. So stay tuned on plans for that. Thank you, everyone.
There you have it. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt discussing all things surrounding the administration. The White House Press Secretary stating that the shutdown should come to an end, and President Trump is very hopeful that will happen sometime later this afternoon. With regard to the other top story, yes, I'm making reference to Mr. Jeffrey Epstein. Well, she says that he does care about the victims and that he does not have anything further to say at this very moment. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, back here on the Fox 5 Live Zone. Just about 2 minutes left in shows. Bringing in producer Joey with some of what we call our bumpers for today. What's up, my man?
I have a great bumper for you. Somebody compared this to learning Santa wasn't real. When fajitas come out in a Mexican restaurant, they got me like this, Maryland's own Jax Films. When the fajitas are sizzling, that is me. But what we have learned is that it's not cooking. The fajitas aren't cooking in this picture. They aren't cooking when they're served to you. In restaurants, it's steam. Restaurants often splash a little sizzle sauce. It's like soy sauce, it's lime juice, even onion water, and it's on a hot plate, and then they give it to you to create the drama. So the flavor is real, but that famous fajita sizzle is not. And this was, they talked about this, Jim Loke talked about this on Like It or Not last night. A big revelation for some people. What do you think?
Yeah, you know, by the way, I used to serve as a chef at Jerry Subs way back in my day, and so I know the whole grill thing very well. I pride myself as a grill master. Yeah, I don't know about that. You know, I've ordered steak before, and I like it medium rare, and, you know, the guys or gals that were hanging out with me like it medium, so what did I do? You just take a fork and press the steak down on that little sizzler thing a little bit longer, and it will turn to, or quickly cook to medium temperature. No grill marks, but it's the sizzle sound for me. I would have to somewhat combat that just a little bit. All things you learn right here on the Live Zone, as you do so much more. Producer Joey joining us yet again. We thank you for joining us as we do each and every Monday through Friday, 12 to 2. Tell a friend, bring a friend, and we'll do it again tomorrow. I'll see you tonight at 7 o'clock on Like It or Not. In the meantime, The Take coming up next right here on Fox 5.